Since birth, Kong Seal had been having the same recurring dream. In the dream, he always sat with a group who called themselves gods around a massive game board, playing a cruel game together. They treated humans as chess pieces, wantonly manipulating the course of their lives. Until one day, those gods discovered Kong Seal was actually human as well. The next second, a cold collar appeared out of thin air, clamping tightly around Kong Seal's neck, and he was dragged down from the divine throne, becoming a piece on the board. This game was a catastrophe the gods deliberately visited upon humanity to restore their power. At age 6, Kong Seal came to this place for the first time. As the heavy door slowly opened, several masked figures sat around a round table, and Kong Seal took on an adult form and likewise put on a mask. At that moment, someone urged him, "Take your seat. The game is about to begin." Kong Seal had just sat down. A slew of options popped up before him, requiring him to choose the class and attributes for the piece about to take the field. With a why-not attitude, Kong Seal casually picked one. Unexpectedly, the character he created appeared before him in physical form. The gameplay was simple, yet brutal. Throw the dice. Different numbers correspond to different fates. At every fork of fate, different choices would appear, and each choice would change the character's trajectory, even altering the course of the entire game. In other words, every choice made by everyone would affect the game's future. To win, luck, strategy, and correct decisions were all indispensable. As the first stage boss was slain, the Catwoman announced, "Today's game ends here." All the participants, including Kong Seal, had been deeply captivated by this game. Over the following years, Kong Seal gradually became obsessed with this dream game. Each day, what he looked forward to most was coming here again. During this time, Kong Seal tried nearly every class combination and created a full 30 legendary characters. Thus, he became a half-genuine, half-mythic idol among these gods. They believed Kong Seal was the only one likely to clear the final stage, Ascension to Heaven. Today was the last day of the game experience and the final chance to clear Ascension to Heaven. If time permitted, Kong Seal would compile all these years of experience and create the strongest, the 31st piece. But now he could only use his 30th piece to make a final assault on the pinnacle. The moment the dice fell, an accident occurred. Kong Seal actually rolled the smallest number, 1, and the piece encountered a mana backlash on the ascent. His last piece still failed to ascend. The game ended along with it. Everyone expressed regret for Kong Seal, feeling his long efforts had been in vain. Though they might never get to play this game again, looking back on those years, Kong Seal still felt very happy. Yet the next day, that dazzling light in the dream bloomed once more. When Kong Seal opened his eyes, he was astonished to find himself back in that place again. This time he wore no mask on his face. The castle gates opened again. Those people seemed to have been waiting for him all along. Former old friends now glared at him with rage. "So it was you, the human who kept pretending to be a god to deceive us." Kong Seal had no idea what they were talking about. Hadn't they said yesterday that the game was over? The next second, a cold collar appeared out of thin air and locked tight around Kong Seal's neck. A powerful current burst from the collar, mercilessly searing his nerves. Kong Seal didn't understand. Weren't he and they friends? Why did they now want to kill him? That question kept echoing in his mind. Several gods closed in while icily saying they would remove this ant. A yellow-haired man raised his hand and manipulated the collar to hoist Kong Seal into the air. A torrent of lightning surged from his palm and through the collar violently flooded into Kong Seal's body. "You've deceived us for so many years. Your time to die has come." Just then, a man slowly approached from behind and raised a hand to signal him to stop. With a single glance, Kong Seal recognized him. Kodon. He had considerable influence among this group of gods. Could he be here to help? Then Kodon spoke. "How could we let human blood stain the heavens? No one keeps filth in their own home. My suggestion is send him back to his original world." The gods immediately objected when they heard that, and the scene devolved into an uproar as they accused Kodon of trying to shield Kong Seal. Kodon, however, unhurriedly reminded them, "Don't forget what day it is." Only then did someone remember today was their day of harvest. On the day of harvest, if human blood spills in the heavens, it signifies ill omen. A worm like him isn't worth our hands. Send him back where he belongs. As long as our dream officially runs, he will naturally die slowly among the sacrifices. The gods soon agreed to Kodon's proposal. The collar's restraint loosened, and Kong Seal crashed heavily to the ground. After calming down, he immediately understood. Kodon hadn't come to save him, but to make him die in greater agony. Just then, a familiar voice suddenly echoed in his mind. "Snowman, can you hear me?" The owner of the voice was the very one standing before him. "Kodum, your identity has been exposed. There isn't much time. I'll be brief. Starting today, the world you live in and the game world from your dreams will merge into a new world. This is a ritual by which the gods, to restore their waning power, turn all humans into pieces. All the suffering humanity experiences will be converted into madness, and the gods will absorb this madness to restore their own power. And you are the only human who participated in the test of the world of eternity. If you want to save your species, you must complete the ultimate challenge you previously failed. Ascend to heaven. Good luck. May we meet again." The instant the mental exchange ended, Kodong grabbed Kong Seal and lifted him into the air. Beneath Kong Seal's feet lay the world he had originally inhabited. With a flick of Kodon's arm, Kong Seal plummeted toward the ground at extreme speed. When he opened his eyes again, he had not returned to his original world, but was floating in darkness. Suddenly, a line of text appeared before Kong Seal. "The world of eternity is loading," along with the prompt indicating the load was complete. A blinding white light exploded before his eyes. When his vision refocused, Kong Seal found that he had arrived in the game world from his dreams. Meanwhile, a system message popped up before him. Currently, a total of 7.9 billion lives have entered the world of eternity. Seeing that number, Kong Seal's heart lurched. This meant everything Kodon said was true. Although he didn't want to believe it, none of this was a dream anymore. These damned gods had actually treated all human lives as playthings for their own selfish desires. Fine then, let me become my own 31st piece and make these boring, arrogant gods pay the price. This time, the class Kong Seal chose was the one he'd never had the chance to try. Shadow Summoner. As he clicked confirm, the first instance was immediately generated at random before him. Dance of the Moonlight Night. Dance of the Moonlight Night is the World of Eternity's beginner tutorial. Though it's a tutorial, the difficulty is anything but low. The instance is riddled with all kinds of traps and rules. A slight misstep, and you'll be stuck here forever. Worse still, the Shadow Summoner has very low HP, a thoroughly squishy class, but for now, Kong Seal could only grit his teeth and press on. Before long, he arrived at the instance's gate. How to open the gate is the first trap in this stage. You must trigger the mechanisms in the correct order. Thankfully, Kong Seal remembered the sequence. Pull down the left lever first, then the right lever. The Gate of Miracles slowly opened, pushing the door open and stepping and triggers the second trap. The ground was covered with pattern pressure plates, and only by stepping on them in the correct order could one cross the bridge safely. If you stepped wrong, you would trigger the corresponding trap or even plummet straight into a bottomless abyss. And the key to solving it was written in the words on the opposite wall. The lion is ferocious and never yields. The sheep is gentle. At the end of the sentence, the benevolent moon will embrace them. The jealous wolf will follow behind the lion. Therefore, the correct order is lion, wolf, moon, and finally, sheep. Following his memory, Kong Seal quickly got through this stage. For Kong Seal, who once nearly ascended to heaven, a level of this difficulty was as easy as drinking water. After clearing it, he obtained his first iron chest reward. However, Kong Seal had no intention of claiming it now. As long as he didn't open the chest, it would keep upgrading based on his cumulative clears. The further he went, the richer the rewards. Following the path forward, he soon reached the next stage. This stage was similar to the previous one, with the only difference being the floor plates had become 3 colors. This time, Kong Seal's past experience was of no use because the pattern of plates in this stage was randomly generated. He could only rely on memory to try out a rough stepping sequence. Kong Seal carefully stepped onto the first red plate. Luckily, no mechanism was triggered. This suggested his approach wasn't a problem for the moment. For the second step, he stepped onto a blue plate. The next second, wall mechanism suddenly activated and blades and arrows swarmed out. Fortunately, the wooden staff in his hand blocked most of the damage for him. The attack only grazed his arm, leaving a bloody scratch, but the pain made his whole body tremble. Afterward, through continuous trial and error, Kong Seal finally grasped the rough pattern of the stage. For the path ahead, he only needed to step on red plates 4 times in a row. On the 5th step, he tentatively stepped onto a blue plate. Unexpectedly, the walls on both sides of the corridor immediately began slowly closing toward the middle. However, This also confirmed his guess. As long as he stepped on red 4 times in a row, then once on black, he could pass safely. Having grasped the pattern, Kong Seal immediately sprinted toward the exit and dashed out of the passage before the corridor fully closed. The chest's quality was correspondingly stacked and upgraded into a golden chest. If he claimed it now, he could clear immediately and enter the next instance. But Kong Seal still didn't open it, because there was something ahead he had to get his hands on. Soon, he arrived at the final stage of this instance. Ancient runes were carved on the door, and before he pushed it open, the system popped up a warning, trying to dissuade him. But since he had already chosen this path, how could Kong Seal shrink back at the threshold? He slapped his palm directly onto the door, and thus launched a challenge at the final step here. The stone door slowly opened, revealing a wide plaza before his eyes. In the center of the plaza, there was only a single knight kneeling on one knee. When he raised his head and saw Kong Seal, a shard of icy light flashed in his eyes. He slowly rose to his feet and leveled the long sword in his hand straight at Kong Seal. Although Kong Seal had defeated this guy many times, standing face to face with him still made cold sweat break out uncontrollably. Long time no see, Moonlight Knight Karuna. On the plaza, the only safe zone was the dais behind Karuna, but getting onto that safe ground was far from as easy as imagined. More troublesome still, Karuna carried a critical strike buff. A single hit from him meant instant death on the spot. However, it wasn't without a chance. Those plates scattered across the ground were the only breakthrough. The colors and sequences of the plates in the previous 2 stages were precisely the key core to conquering this one. At this moment, Karuna lunged in again. Relying on his footwork, Kong Seal dodged his first wave of attacks and at the same time stepped on the red lion plate at his feet. Karuna, fierce as the wind just a moment ago, suddenly lagged for a beat. This was exactly the effect of the red plates, weakening the moonlight enveloping him. The less moonlight, the slower his speed, and his shield value would decrease accordingly. Taking advantage of his brief pause, Kong Seal stepped in succession on the red wolf and red moon plates. Karuna's speed and shield were weakened yet again. His movements were indeed much slower. However, the red plates could only trigger roughly 3 times in a short period. Fortunately, that was enough. Kong Seal took another step forward and stomped hard onto the black sheep plate. In midair, a fireball coalesced out of thin air and trailing a scorching gust, howled as it smashed toward Karuna. The fireball struck the target precisely. This was the black plate's ability. However, each time a black plate released a fireball, it would also replenish Karuna's moonlight. Therefore, before every attack, you had to shave off his moonlight first. Once his moonlight was topped up, Karuna immediately swung his longsword and began charging power. Seeing that stance, Kong Seal couldn't have been clearer. He was getting serious. This was his ultimate moonlight slash. As the long sword came down, a razor-edged blade aura nearly swept the entire plaza, yet Kong Seal stood there unscathed, a radiant barrier raised before him. Because beneath his feet was a blue plate. The blue plate's effect unconditionally blocked one attack. Next, so long as he kept repeating the previous sequence, Kong Seal could clear this stage safely. But this time, what he wanted wasn't just to clear. It was to bring down the Moonlight Knight. The problem was that the fireball didn't deal much damage to Karuna. After each attack from a black plate, the opponent would unleash another Moonlight Slash. Kong Seal could only cycle cautiously among the red, black, and blue plates. The slightest mistake would mean instant death on the spot. Under the incessant tickle-level attacks, Kong Seal could clearly feel that Karuna's HP was nearly depleted. At this moment, Karuna entered berserk mode. His speed and agility were greatly boosted. After weathering another of his volleys, Kong Seal could clearly sense that the opponent's stamina was nearing its limit. At the same time, he understood it was time to end this battle. Kong Seal stepped on 3 red plates in a row, shaving Karuna's moonlight to the limit, then stepped back and onto a black plate. The fireball smashed precisely into the charging knight, and Karuna completely lost the ability to fight. Kong Seal stepped on a black plate again. That final strike became the last straw that toppled him. As the Moonlight Knight crashed to the ground, the stage was declared cleared. The system popped up the reward settlement and threw in an achievement title. But Kong Seal's true target wasn't these, but the shadow the Moonlight Knight left behind upon death. Kong Seal immediately activated shadow summoning. Countless black mists billowed out from behind him and quickly converged on the ground into a human form. A perfect silhouette emerged, the shadow of Moonlight Knight Karuna. Looking at his new summoned beast, Kong Seal was very satisfied. Although its abilities were only 20% of the original, it was, after all, a Hera-grade shadow summon. Next, Kong Seal claimed all the accumulated chest rewards at once. He obtained 2 weapons in total, along with some additional bonuses. The Moonlight Sword was originally Karuna's exclusive weapon, so it naturally continued to be used by Karuna. And the Full Moon Scepter happened to replace the wooden staff Kong Seal had previously broken. After claiming all the rewards, Kong Seal did not choose to return to town to rest, but stepped straight into the next instance. This time stage featured a total of 5 orc tribes. The objective required killing the chieftain of any one tribe within the time limit. The difficulty of this stage was directly 5 times higher than the previous one. Correspondingly, however, the system would also match 4 other players to form a party with Kong Seal to complete the task. Kong Seal stood where he was, quietly waiting for his teammates to appear. But after waiting for a long time, there was still no one around him. Just then, a bright red status bar alert suddenly popped up before him. Immediately after, 3 more red prompt windows popped up one after another. Seeing this, Kong Seal was stunned. The 5-man party had dwindled to just him before the team had even assembled. It seemed that if he wanted to make it through alive, he would have to rely on himself from here on. Soon, following the prompts, Kong Seal arrived at the locations where his teammates had fallen to assess the scene. All around were the corpses of slain orcs. On wooden stakes in the distance, several ghastly pale figures were impaled. When Kong Seal saw who they were, a chill ran down his spine. They were his original 4 teammates. Judging by their attire, it was a very standard party composition. 1 cleric, 2 warriors, and 1 archer. With good coordination, they would have been fully capable of sweeping this place. But now their fate was the same. All nailed the stakes. Kong Seal sighed, understanding the situation he now faced. He had to alone find a way to break the game, and the tactical options available to him were few. As he racked his brains for a plan, several options popped up before him again. Kong Seal had to choose carefully, because every decision would alter the course of events to come. Choose wrong ones, and he might meet the Reaper on the spot. Option 1, a frontal assault. With his current strength, even with Karuna, it wasn't enough to take on swarming orcs. Option 2, exploit the advantage of a night raid. But if he was alone, it didn't mean much. That left him with only option 3, to explore the surroundings and gather intel. Based on his understanding of this stage, the most important thing now was to find the exile of the Rockmer tribe. Kong Seal remembered there should be a banished orc near the foot of the mountain. He followed the route from his memory as he searched. A crisp bell suddenly sounded underfoot. It was an alarm bell used by orcs. As long as it was present, it meant the exile was hiding nearby. At that moment, an elderly voice came from deep within the grass. "Human, what did you come here for?" Kong Seal stepped over the bell and approached slowly as he explained he meant no harm. But the voice in the grass grew more tense, repeatedly telling him not to come closer. Yet, Kong Seal didn't stop and kept moving toward the source of the voice. "I may be human, but I'm not here to hurt you." Unexpectedly, the voice suddenly grew agitated. "You must be sent by Rockmer. What exactly do you want to do to me?" A new options panel popped up before Kong Seal again. He stared at the choices in silence for a moment, then, after hesitating, chose the 5th. Then he asked, "Why won't you let me come over?" There was silence in the grass. Kong Seal pressed on. "Are you sick?" Hearing this, the orc clearly froze and finally emerged slowly from the grass. "You see it, don't you?" Pointing to the sores covering his skin, he said, "These wounds on my body were all caused by disease. It's an infectious illness. You'd better stay away from me." New options popped up before Kong Seal again. He didn't rush to choose, but spoke first. "I came here to find out what you've been through. Perhaps only I can help you, but if I don't come over, there's no way I can help." The orc paused, incredulous. "You're not afraid of being infected. What exactly do you want to know?" Kong Seal only replied, "Whatever you're willing to say is fine. I'm all ears." The orc was silent for a long time, finally lowering his head in thought. Then he turned and walked deeper into the woods, tossing back. "Come with me." A system prompt popped up. "The orc before you has lowered his guard toward you." Before long, Kong Seal followed him to a dilapidated hut deep in the forest. The orc finally spoke, opening his heart to him. He told Kong Seal that among the 5 great tribes, an endemic disease had long circulated. This disease would recur in the next generation after the previous one died. Later, the tribal chief set a cruel rule. All orcs who contracted the disease had to be exiled far away. My mother was one of the exiles. At that time, she was already pregnant with me. She knelt before the chieftain and begged that after I was born, I be allowed to remain in the tribe, but the clansmen all believed I would be a source of contagion. No one agreed. From then on, I read many books and kept researching this endemic disease. Later, I discovered it was not incurable. It just required a medicinal herb called lion's mane. The books say this herb grows on this very mountain. But because of the disease, my bones became brittle, and I simply couldn't climb those cliffs. By this point, Kong Seal already had a rough idea of what he needed to do next. He said, "Seriously, I'll help you find lion's mane." The orc, incredulous, immediately asked what he wanted in return. Even an exiled orc understood the principle of not accepting charity without repayment. Kong Seal readily said, "When I get the lion's mane, I hope you'll do me a favor." No sooner had he spoken than the orc fell to his knees. "As long as you can get the lion's mane, I'll do anything for you." A system prompt followed. Eden Quest. Quest duration 10 hours. The destination was not close to here. Kong Seal had to set out at once. If he could gain this orc's help, it would be the key piece to turning the tide. It wasn't until the sun was about to dip below the horizon that Kong Seal finally reached the cliff where lion's mane grew. However, the entire cliff face was bare. There wasn't a trace of lion's mane in sight. Kong Seal couldn't help feeling a bit dejected. Had the location been wrong, he walked to the cliff's edge and leaned out to look down for new options appeared before him again. Kong Seal simply plopped down on the ground and chose wait because he believed that orc had no reason to deceive him. As the sun slowly sank, a rapid crackling suddenly came from the rocks at the cliff's edge. Clusters of lion's mane mushrooms burst from the rock crevices. This plant appears on the rock face only in the brief moments as dusk is about to end. Kong Seal knew his wait hadn't been in vain. He walked to the edge and summoned 2 shadow hands which slowly extended down the cliff. It was his first time truly fine controlling this ability. A bit too much force, and the lion's mane would be crushed outright. He had to concentrate fully, letting the shadow hands be as gentle as holding an egg, slowly prying the lion's mane from the rock face. Once he felt a secure grip, Kong Seal hurriedly drew the shadow hands back. Confirming that the slightly blemished yet intact lion's mane was in hand, he finally let out a breath of relief. Just then, a faint gleam among the treetops caught his attention. He had only just looked puzzled when a prompt abruptly appeared. Hidden adventure triggered. The pocket watch that lost its owner. Head to a nearby town and look for someone who recognizes the watch's owner. This was a quest line unlike anything Kong Seal had seen. He had no idea what would happen upon completion. But one thing was certain. The rewards for hidden quests are never shabby, and carrying this pocket watch would not bring him any negative effects. When night had fully fallen, the diseased orc was sitting by the hearth, anxiously waiting for Kong Seal's return. At that moment, he had already begun to doubt whether that human truly intended to help him. He hated useless hope more than anyone. Just then, a rustling came from the grass. He sprang to his feet, face full of vigilance. The next moment, Kong Seal emerged from the undergrowth. By now, he too had been eroded by the contagion. It spread far exceeding his expectations. Kong Seal held out the lion's mane to him. "Is this what you were looking for?" The orc froze for a few seconds, then dropped heavily to his knees. He took the lion's mane and rushed into the hut to begin concocting the antidote. Before long, the illness in Kong Seal's body was rapidly suppressed by the antidote, restoring him to normal. The now recovered orc likewise sought out Kong Seal, ready to fulfill his promise. He told Kong Seal his name was Meal. System options appeared again. Kong Seal gave them a quick glance, then asked me, "Is there a way to break the tribe from within?" Mal pondered for a moment and slowly nodded. "Perhaps there's a method we can try." He handed Kong Seal 2 potions. The red one is a disguise potion. After drinking it, you can take on an orc's appearance for a day. The blue one is a madness potion. An orc who drinks it will unleash the most savage side of his heart. Then Meal explained, "Today is the Rockmere Trib's Harvest Festival. On the day of the Harvest Festival, they pour all the blood of the animals they hunted into a great cauldron and boil it. At midnight, all the orcs will drink that blood water to thank the heavens for granting them food. All you need to do is pour the blue potion into that cauldron before then. When the time comes, everything will naturally spiral out of control." Having said that, Neil personally set his own hut on fire, slung on his pack, and prepared to leave these mountains and forests. He planned to go out and travel to realize his long-held dream of exploration. Before leaving, he said to Kong Seal, "When you need me, I will come back." After Meal left, Kong Seal looked down at the red potion in his hand and decided to try it first. He pulled the cork and took a big swig. The poison tasted extremely foul, and his throat burned as if it were on fire. In the next instant, Kong Seal's whole body jolted, and his bones began to grow, twist, and reassemble madly. The sensation was like growing a body all over again. So painful it nearly drove one insane. He didn't know how long it took, but the agony gradually subsided. He himself had become a handsome orc. The scene shifted. Kong Seal arrived at the gates of the Rock Muller tribe. He made up a couple of excuses on the spot and bluffed his way past the guards questioning, slipping smoothly into the tribe. According to the intel Meal provided, that cauldron was near the altar halfway up the mountain. The chiefs of the 5 orc tribes would all gather in that area. Aside from this day's alliance, they were otherwise constantly at odds and fighting among themselves. And this delicate relationship between them happened to provide the best fuse for Kong Seal's plan. Soon he saw the massive blood cauldron at the center of the crowd. That was precisely the target of his trip. Kong Seal took out the blue potion from his bosom, took a deep breath, and mustered his courage to step forward. He said to a guard, "This is blood I collected while hunting." Unexpectedly, the guard waved him off. "There's already enough blood in the cauldron." Kongyal immediately added, "It's the blood of the white horn orago. In Orish values, the blood of this animal is an extremely precious sacrificial material." Hearing that, the guard paused, took the vial, and told him to wait where he was while he went to ask the high priest. Not long after, the guard presented the vial to the high priest. Some guy says, "This is the blood of a white horn orago and wants to offer it." The high priest sniffed at the mouth of the bottle and detected nothing amiss. That was because Neil had already treated the potion scent. He returned the vial to the guard and told him to pour it into the cauldron. The guard went to the cauldron and without hesitation poured the entire bottle of potion into it. Soon the harvest ceremony officially began. The high priest raised his goblet high and shouted, "Raise your cups, everyone! We thank the earth for its favor, for granting us flesh and plunder. Drink this cup of blood and let more blood moisten the earth." The orcs were fired up by his speech, tears streaming as they raised their cups high and drained the blood in their cups in one gulp. As for Kong Seal, he only took one symbolically and quietly poured it on the ground. At this moment, he noticed the 5 tribal chiefs seated to the side. His true target was the one among them, the strongest orc chieftain in history, Jhamad. Soon, the blood in the cauldron was drained, and the harvest festival was nearing its end. All the orcs, including the 5 chiefs, had already drunk the blue potion. An hour later, the effects would fully kick in, and all Kong Seal needed to do at that point was patiently wait for his chance. But before that, he had another arrangement to make. Next, Kong Seal headed to his next destination, the chief's treasury. He hid in the dark, quietly waiting for the potion's effects to manifest in the guards. It wasn't long before the eyes of the 2 guards at the treasury door gradually turned blood red, and even the way they looked at each other was full of killing intent. In no time, they were at each other's throats. Soon, the fight ended. At that point, only a single blood-drenched orc remained at the door. Knowing the time had come, Kong Seal immediately summoned Karuna and finished off the last guard. Time was tight, so Kong Seal had Karuna enter the treasury to clear the inside while he kept watch at the door. Inside the treasury, there was still one guard barely holding on. He was trembling all over, struggling to suppress the surging madness within. Unlike ordinary orcs, he still retained a sliver of reason. Just then, he noticed a figure approaching him step by step. It was the Moonlight Knight, Karuna. The instant the long sword left its sheath, he raised his axe and used all his strength to block the strike. But Karuna's swordplay grew ever more ferocious. The gleam of the blade wheeled and a cold flash swept across his neck. In the next second, the guard crashed to the ground. Kong Seal rushed into the treasury at once and took the key from him. A new options panel popped up, and after a quick scan, he made his choice. In fact, there was only one real treasure in this treasury, the Rock Gauntlet. Wearing it grants great strength. This gauntlet was the very root of the 5 tribes' ceaseless strife. Later, to stop them, the Trib's warlock bound the 5 chiefs together with the Curse of Brothers, which finally forced them to cease fighting and seal the Rock Gauntlet here. For now, Kong Seal did not hurry to take the gauntlet. He took only the key and slipped quietly out of the treasury. Not long after, the chiefs arrived one after another at the treasury gate. Seeing the guard lying on the ground, they instantly sensed that something was wrong. They combined their strength to blast open the protective door and rushed into the treasury, only to find the rock gauntlet still lying safely in its place. The chiefs looked at one another, stunned into silence for a moment. Soon enough, however, someone pointed the finger at Jhamad. "It must be you trying to snatch the gauntlet in the chaos and then get rid of us," Jhamad retorted. "Have you forgotten the curse on us?" At that, the other chiefs were left speechless. They decided to first deal with the out-of-sea control orcs outside, and before leaving, they didn't forget to warn Jhamad. "You'd better not set your sights on the gauntlet, otherwise you'll be making an enemy of 4 brothers." After everyone left, Jhamad still stared at the gauntlet, saying nothing for a long while. Elsewhere, when one of the chiefs returned to his own encampment, it was already a scene of devastation. He was exerting all his will to suppress the berserk urge within when he suddenly stiffened. There seemed to be a person deep in the cave. At that moment, the effect of Kong Seal's disguise potion happened to wear off, and he walked out from the depths of the cave. This was precisely his next step. He hadn't taken the gauntlet in order to sow suspicion among the chiefs, then used the chaos to defeat them one by one. When that chief saw the newcomer was human, he understood everything at once. "So it was you, human, behind all of this." With a roar, he raised his axe and charged. Kong Seal said blandly, "Karuna, deal with him." In almost the blink of an eye, the chief was covered in blood and fell to his knees. He gritted his teeth in unwillingness. "My brothers will definitely avenge me." But Karuna showed no mercy, and with a swing of the sword, ended his life. Kong Seal casually took the torch from the wall and tossed it beside the corpse, watching the flames slowly devour the cave. "Overthinking it, no one will know you died here." At this moment, the Rockler tribe was in chaos. One chieftain's cave suddenly went up in flames, immediately drawing the attention of all the orcs. The other 3 chieftains stormed into Jhamad's cave in a fury, convinced he was the mastermind behind it all. And Jhamad intended to use this opportunity to completely get rid of these brothers. "You finally come." Meanwhile, in an abandoned hut, Kong Seal was quietly cooking. He tossed the moon seed obtained from the first stage into the pot. It has 2 effects. First, a permanent boost to one's stats. Second, the right to use the moon stage once per day. What Kong Seal needed next was precisely this power. After eating his fill, he knew it was time for him to take the stage. On the other side, Jam ignored the 3 chieftains' questioning. From various clues, he had vaguely sensed that the one truly stirring up the situation was someone else. But this chaos was exactly the result he wanted. The rock gauntlet was already on his hand. Seeing this, the 3 chieftains' faces changed drastically. They immediately concluded that Jhamad was the mastermind behind the turmoil. Jhamad couldn't be bothered to argue and frankly admitted, "That's right, this was all my doing." The next second, the 3 chieftains raised their weapons in unison and charged at Jhamad. They saw him gather power slightly, then blast out a punch that sent the foremost charging chieftain flying to the ground on the spot. In just a single exchange, one chieftain was dead. The gauntlet erupted with terrifying rocky power. With every step Jhamad took, masses of rubble heaved up from the ground. Just then, his heart tightened. Someone was approaching. He turned to look back and saw the Moonlight Knight Karuna step by step entering the cave. Immediately after, Karuna swung his sword and severed the rocks at the cave mouth, completely sealing off the escape route. Seeing this, Jhamad also understood this human had come prepared. From deep in the cave, Kong Seal walked out, smiling at him. "Brothers shouldn't be fighting. You should get along." Jhamad didn't seem particularly surprised. "It seems all of this was your scheme. After all, my foolish brothers couldn't have pulled this off." The words had barely fallen when the rock gauntlet burst with a blinding glow. Jhamad stomped hard on the ground and in an instant charged at Kong Seal. Karuna immediately moved up to meet him, and the 2 forces clashed fiercely in the cramped cave. However, amid the fierce battle, Jhamad quietly charged his left fist, and with a punch sent Karuna flying, lifting a mass of rocks to crash down on him. Karuna's sword moved like the wind, slicing the incoming rocks to pieces one by one. Jham's power far exceeded Kong Seal's expectations. By rights, after wearing the rock gauntlet and personally killing 3 brothers, he should have been weakened to the limit by the curse. Yet, he could still fight Karuna to a standstill. At that moment, Jhamad raised his fist and slammed a powerful punch straight at Karuna. Then his fists pounded down like a raging storm. Karuna's body was forced backward uncontrollably. Jhamad drew back his right fist and leaped forward. Karuna immediately held his sword crosswise to block, but his body still shuddered violently. Just as the 2 were deadlocked, the rock gauntlet suddenly emitted a surge of power. Jhamad tightened his arm slightly. A mighty force burst out from within the gauntlet. Karuna was blasted away by this force. Jhamad's strength once again exceeded my expectations. If we want to break the stalemate now, there's only that one method left to use. At this moment, Jhamad jumped up and raised both arms. Then he slammed both fists hard into the ground. A wave of energy frenziedly spread out at once, hurling up a mass of rocks. Karuna swiftly swung his long sword and sliced them all apart. Jhamad immediately seized the chance and charged in, and once again slammed a punch at Karuna. Kongseal observed while rapidly analyzing the cause. While the rock gauntlet provides tremendous combat power, it also feeds the recoil damage back to the user. By that logic, Jam ought to be on his last legs right now. But reality was the exact opposite. There were almost no signs of his condition collapsing. Could it be that the rock gauntlet wasn't causing any recoil to him at all, but had been supplying him with power the entire time? But that can't be right. By now, the rock gauntlet should have exhausted all its power and entered a charging state. Why can he still output power continuously? Has it evolved into the fist of the mountain? If so, once it absorbs enough earth energy, it will complete its upgrade. The problem was that in this run, Kongseal had operated almost entirely according to the strategy in his memory, triggering no new variables. Only then did it suddenly hit him. This was his first time facing Jhamad head-on. In the past, as long as he killed any one chieftain, the system would directly count it as a clear. The boss of the stage is random. Different bosses vary in difficulty, and this time the boss happened to be Jhamad. The variables began right here. Before the thought had even finished spinning, Jhamad caught an opening and slammed a punch into Karuna's chest. Karuna was sent flying and crashed into Kongseal, and the two fell together. The impact left the already fragile shadow summoner gravely wounded on the spot. Across from them, Jhamad had entered berserk state and was beginning to charge his final ultimate. Gritting his teeth, Kongseal propped himself up with the full moon scepter and stood. And at that very moment, a surge of intense moonlight burst from Karuna. He had entered his final stage, the full moon. Victory or defeat would be decided in the next single strike. Jhamad roared to the sky, his charge nearing completion. Kongseal immediately slammed his staff into the ground and activated the moon stage. A vast magic array unfurled above the cave ceiling, locking the entire sky within it. Pure moonlight pierced the rock layers and poured down entirely onto Karuna. Sensing the threat, Jhamad frantically controlled the rocks, trying to interrupt Karuna's charge with a mountain-crumbling onslaught. But as soon as those rocks touched the edge of the array, they were slowly dissolved by the moonlight. Karuna's charge up was not interrupted. "Karuna, don't you dare lose! Life and death hang on this strike!" Karuna let out a low shout. Moonlight slash. The long sword, brimming with full moon power, traced a resplendent arc through the darkness. At the same time, Jhamad released the last shred of stored power in his body. The two forces collided and the entire cave and even the mountain began to shudder violently. After an unknown length of time, the sword light gradually faded. The strongest behemoth, Jhamad, finally crashed to the ground. Step by step, Kongseal slowly walked up to him. Jhamad was now on his knees, gasping for breath. He looked up at Kongseal. "Shadow Summoner, please take me. I don't want to vanish here. I still have so many things left undone." Before the words had even fallen, Karuna ended him from behind with a single stroke. At the same time, Jhamad's departed soul laid a vicious curse on Kongseal. Within a week, all of Kongseal's stats would drop by 30%, accompanied by a stubborn skin disease. However, since all 5 Rockmer brothers were dead, the chain of the brothers' curse was completely severed, and Kongseal thereby shook off all negative effects. The system immediately issued rewards, and Kongseal in one go obtained 3 new titles. Each title provided varying degrees of bonuses to his attributes. At the same time, Karuna also completed his awakening, gaining the sustainability ambition and the title The One Who Fells Mountains. He could now exert 40% of his original body's power. Right now, a new problem lay before Kongseal. Should he take Jhamad as a summoned beast as well? In his view, Jhamad was the kind who broke conventions. The starting point for throwing the entire board's flow into error. He didn't know whether bringing such a variable to his side would ultimately be good or bad. After a moment's thought, Kongseal still made his decision to take him. He was still too weak to be choosy. Soon, Jham's shadow was successfully summoned, inheriting 32% of his original combat power. He made his stance clear, willing to become Kongseal's summoned beast. But before that, there was one thing he had to finish: collecting the corpses of his 4 brothers. He needed to conduct a ritual to absorb their cursecraft power. After absorbing the curses of his 4 brothers one by one, his own abilities rose again and stabilized at 40%. Looking at his massive back, Kong Seal fell into a brief silence, truly worthy of the friendly 5 brothers. With the formal deaths of the 5 chieftains, the Rockmuller tribe was declared disbanded, and with this dungeon cleared, the world of eternity opened 2 new secret labyrinths. At the same time, the name Snowman began to spread throughout the entire Pandia region. Next, Kong Seal opened the system reward Rockmere divine relic chest. He obtained a rock robe, an elven root, and some currency. The most dazzling, however, was that divine relic, the Fist of the Mountain. Without a doubt, this equipment had to be worn by Jhamad. Only he could draw out the relic's full power. The rock robe was a mage robe tailored for Kong Seal. After putting it on, his maximum stamina increased by 10%. The elven root, like the moon seed, is a consumable that grants a permanent buff. Overall, in this run, Kong Seal still reaped a bountiful harvest. After that, the system teleported him to a new location. In the next second, Kong Seal appeared within a human city-state. No sooner had he entered the city than the surrounding crowd began whispering. At this moment, a score leaderboard panel appeared before him. It showed his current points, 327,600. It was first place on the leaderboard. However, his identity status was set to private. Like him, an adventurer in 3rd place had also chosen to hide. The other players, seeing the top score, all wore shocked expressions. One hot-tempered fellow even started yelling right in the square, demanding the first place show up so he could ask why the score was so high. Kong Seal chose to ignore this. He began sizing up the players around him and quickly noticed something. Everyone here seemed to be speaking Korean. In other words, the players gathered in the city-state were all Koreans. According to what Koden said at the time, the world of eternity isn't divided by countries, but resembles some larger partition. So it shouldn't be possible for only one nation's people to be here. In other words, the zone he was in now was very likely akin to a Korea server. Just then, the system issued a new quest again, but this time the quest content was rest. Next, all players had to recuperate for a month in Free City Kongori. Kong Seal received his identification and walked into the city proper. For players, whether they can enter a city has never been the problem. The real problem is this is the peak invasion period. Just like a tourist high season in the real world, Kongori would see a massive influx of players in a very short time. The most important thing for Kong Seal right now was to find a place to stay first. He soon found an inn that looked reasonably clean. Fortunately, there were still vacancies. He spent 12 gold coins to book a room for 30 days outright. The price included meals and a bathing space. It was a bit expensive, but the place was clean and just about worth it. After arranging everything, Kong Seal decided to get some sleep first. Karuna stood at the door, keeping watch through the night. Counting from the moment the gods discovered his identity, Kong Seal hadn't closed his eyes for a full day. The instant he lay on the bed, he fell asleep almost immediately. He thought he wouldn't be going back to that place that made him sick to his stomach. Although he didn't return to that castle in the sky, his consciousness once again descended into a pitch-black space. A system prompt popped up. Someone is very interested in the madness you've collected. Madness merchant Janet, about to make an entrance. Right after that, a woman wearing bizarre clothing, her head covered by a demon mask, appeared in his dream. She introduced herself as one of the merchants responsible for ultimate transactions during the world merger, and her name was Janet. Kong Seal asked her, "What do world merger and ultimate transactions mean?" That sentence left Kong Seal completely stunned. "When were humans sold?" Janet sighed and slowly explained. "Your master sold off the inhabitants of both worlds at the same time as the world merger, and the buyers of Earth were residents of another world. They treat this world as a live broadcast stage. Right now, you're essentially ancient gladiators. The viewing fees paid by the audience are called madness. Madness is the opposite of faith and also the fuel that powers the operation of the world. And I collect madness and exchange it for items. During this process, a handling fee is generated. That portion of madness goes into the pockets of your former masters." Hearing this, Kongiel finally fully understood the meaning of Kodon's earlier words. The so-called gods collect madness by selling humans and the residents of Pandia. As long as the lives that were sold do something sufficiently eye-catching, they become the talk and spectacle of the other world's residents. And those lofty gods make madness off this live-action battle royale, restoring their power. To escape this hellish world, only one path remained. Ascend to the heavens. Janet clapped her hands lightly. All right, to the point. You currently have a total of 3,000 madness. Kong Seal asked curiously. Is that a lot? Janet waved her hand. From my perspective, not really, but by the current standard of all humanity, you're in an absurdly high tier. As of now, Kong Seal is the human who has collected the most madness in the entire world of eternity. Kong Seal then asked her, So, what can I buy with madness? With a casual wave from Janet, thousands of option panels immediately popped up before him. The dazzling variety of items was so overwhelming that just skimming them made his head spin. After picking and choosing, Kong Seal ultimately selected only two, a spice jar and a fresh ingredients pouch. Nothing else seemed particularly appealing to him. Janet's composure cracked on the spot. As a merchant, being brushed off with a spice jar by a customer was practically an insult to her dignity. To prove her inventory was more than that, she directly brought out her stash from the bottom of the chest. A pitch-black shadow flower manifested in her hand. After using it, you can forcibly trigger a shadow summoning against an opponent with a massive level gap. Janet said proudly, ITE like this are normally never sold to first-time customers. Kong Seal asked the price. She replied lightly, Exactly 3,000 madness. Kong Seal hesitated on the spot because he had absolutely no idea of the true exchange rate of madness. He couldn't tell whether this deal was a ripoff or not. Seeing that he was tempted yet hesitant, Janet grew anxious. How about this? If you buy the shadow flower, I'll throw in those two items you wanted earlier for free. However, you have to promise me one thing. Come to me for the next transaction as well. After a brief silence, Kong Seal nodded in agreement. Consider it a test run for using madness the first time. With the deal concluded, Janet waved goodbye. See you next time, assuming you're still alive. Then next, Kong Seal's consciousness gradually cleared. The items obtained from the transaction he had just completed in the dream were now lying quietly on the bedside table. It seems this madness system is quite interesting. Since he can't avoid it, he might as well make good use of it. Kong Seal rolled out of bed, ready to start today's agenda. Surely no one actually chooses to properly rest on a rest day. First step, allocate the newly gained ability points to each attribute. Second step, determine the direction of the next adventure and the general movements of the other players. Final step, complete the pocket watch quest brought back from the Rocky Mountain. Strangely though, Kong Seal couldn't remember anything about that pocket watch. Ever since he woke up this morning, his memories felt torn to shreds, broken, full of gaps. Many things that should have been familiar had become blurry. Kong Seal was certain he definitely didn't have amnesia. So, what on earth was going on? With questions in mind, he came to a square packed with players. But the mental state of this group of players looked quite poor. Just then, a middle-aged man shouted at the crowd, Right now, all of us humans must unite as one. Going our separate ways is courting death. As soon as he said this, the previously restless players actually began to quiet down. At this moment, Kong Seal's insight skill activated, and a system prompt indicated he had successfully shaken off the influence of the man's eloquence. After a brief discussion, the players actually broadly agreed with this nonsense. Since they wanted unity naturally, they had to nominate a central figure. For this, the middle-aged man was well prepared. Smiling, he announced that he had already invited a heavyweight. Then, a burly man with bulging muscles and a rather vacant look stepped out from the back of the crowd. The middle-aged man proclaimed loudly, This is the player ranked first on the leaderboard. Because Kong Seal's ranking information was set to private at the time, he could spout nonsense with impunity. Listening from below, Kong Seal found himself wanting to face Pal. Even more ridiculous, some people actually bought it. Many fools were completely awed by the title of first place. Seeing that people had taken the bait, the middle-aged man struck while the iron was hot and righteously declared that his goal was to create a mutually protective community. Hearing this, Kong Seal instantly lost interest in the show. A community sounds noble, but in the end, few will stick to the original ideals. But none of this had anything to do with Kong Seal because he trusted no one. After leaving the square, he went to the class training area open specifically to players. After informing the gatekeeper that he was there to enhance his abilities and learn new ones, the other party respectfully opened the gate for him. Stepping inside, the surroundings instantly fell into darkness. In front of Kong Seal stood a solitary tree, the skill tree. Although it was his first time seeing a physical version, he couldn't have been more familiar with the operation flow. Without hesitation, he prioritized enhancing the most important shadow summon. After the enhancement was completed, the stats of the currently held summon beasts increased by 5% overall. Moreover, whenever shadow summon succeeds, a summon beast's abilities can retain at least over 40% of the originals. With the upgrades wrapped up for now, Kong Seal headed to a fairly lively restaurant. After ordering, he toyed with the pocket watch he had brought back from the Rock M tribe. He recalled Kodon's words. He must not use his own experience to help others, or he would surely die. Precisely because of this, he had to act alone for the time being. The issue of the pocket watch, however, was giving him more and more of a headache. He truly couldn't remember anything about it. Just as he was frowning in thought, an elderly man nearby suddenly glanced over at him. The next second, the old man stood up and walked quickly toward him. The old man stared at the pocket watch, visibly excited. "I think I know this watch." Kong Seal was secretly taken aback. After examining it up close for a while, the old man spoke slowly. "This pocket watch seems to be my work." Then he invited Kong Seal to his place to talk. As soon as he entered, Kong Seal noticed the room was filled with all kinds of clocks and watches. The old man introduced himself. His name was Bill, and he was a watchmaker. The name Bill gave Kong Seal a strange sense of familiarity. He was sure he had heard that name somewhere before, but just as the memory was about to surface, a sharp headache stabbed into his mind like needles. After learning that Kong Seal's name was Snowman, the old man suddenly muttered, "This world is truly wondrous." Then he asked Kong Seal where he had gotten this watch. Kong Seal selectively recounted what had happened over at the Rockmere tribe. After listening, Bill affirmed, this pocket watch was indeed made by him. His name was engraved on the inside of the case, so what he said was very likely true. Then a story buried for 20 years was slowly unveiled. 20 years ago, Bill's granddaughter was taken by an ogre on the Rocky Mountain. Bill was nearly driven mad at the time, seeking help everywhere. But no one was willing to step in and save her because everyone knew that rescuing someone from a ferocious ogre was a fundamentally impossible task. Until one day, someone appeared. He said he would help me rescue my granddaughter. As he said this, Kong Seal's head began to ache faintly again. Forcing down the discomfort, he asked, "What was that person's name?" Bill answered. That person's name was engraved into the pocket watch. Kong Seal opened the watch case and froze, cold sweat sliding down his forehead. The name engraved inside the watch was actually Snowman. This also explained Bill's earlier baffling sigh. 20 years later, another person named Snowman had appeared with this pocket watch. Kong Seal's head swam, but this time, he managed to piece everything together. He remembered that when he created his first piece, he nicknamed it Snowman. In other words, the snowman who helped Bill rescue his granddaughter 20 years ago was actually the first piece Kong Seal had created. The question is, why would a piece he created on a whim truly change the world of eternity? Shocked, Kong Seal hurried straight to the city library without stopping. At this very moment, his heart was in complete turmoil. For 17 years, he had treated the world of eternity as a virtual game. But now, someone was telling him the events in the game were all real. Even the pieces he casually created were living people. Kong Seal urgently wanted to know the truth and began flipping through Pandia Continent's historical records. You never know until you look. What a shock upon seeing it. At nearly every key node in the continent's history, there were traces. The traces of the 30 pieces of Kong Seal. In other words, the current history of Panda was actually created by Kong Seal himself when he played the game with the gods back then. After that, Kong Seal and Bill went together to a quiet cemetery. Buried here were Bill's granddaughter and Kong Seal's first piece. Although there were no actual remains beneath the headstone, Bill believed that commemorating someone was a beautiful thing in itself. Even if the grave was empty, as long as someone remembered, that stone tablet had a reason to exist. With his hands trembling slightly, Kong Seal gently set the pocket watch before the first piece's tombstone. "I'm sorry, I came so late." In the world of eternity, a fumble means a complete crushing defeat. When rolling dice, rolling a 1 is called a fumble. Kong Seal's first piece lost his life because of a fumble. Even now, that moment remains deeply etched in his mind. Perhaps because he was still young. Then the blow from that failure was too great. Right then, a violent headache tore at his consciousness once more. He clutched his head instinctively. The next second, a cold electronic voice sounded in his mind. Snowman's legacy is beginning. His missing memory surged back like a tide. Only at this moment did Kong Seal finally understand. His memories hadn't vanished. They had been left as fragments within the 30 pieces he had once used. A system panel popped up with a new quest. Quest name, Fate. Quest content. Recover all the memories that Fate left for you. In other words, he had to find the final resting place of those 30 pieces. Before bidding Bill farewell, the old man said to him, "If you ever need help with anything, just come find me." Leaving those words behind, Bill slowly departed. Kong Seal stood alone in the graveyard, lost in long contemplation. On this day, he not only learned the truth of the world of eternity, but also received a legacy from his first piece. A so-called legacy is the process of inheriting abilities or items. Kong Seal had never imagined that one day he would gain new power from a former piece. Even more surprising, Jam also inherited that piece's constitution, greed. That was the first constitution Kong Seal obtained when he created Snowman. This ability greatly accelerates a piece's growth. At the time, the other gods besides Kong Seal were also amazed by this constitution. Everyone believed this piece would grow into an exceedingly terrifying monster. But unfortunately, Snowman did not become a monster. He lost his life in his first fumble. Yet, his potential was immense. It was also he who made Kong Seal face a word for the first time, fate. The marks of Kong Seal's 30 pieces are scattered in corners across the Pandia continent. Whenever he touches those traces, a legacy will trigger, inheriting part of a piece's abilities and memories from life. And these abilities and memories will become the steps on his path to ascend to the heavens. One day, he will become the 31st piece that overturns the entire board. Time swiftly moved to 1 month later. The scene cuts to the Adventurers Guild. Kong Seal comes here intending to look for his third adventure quest. At present, except for a few special cases, players can basically choose quests through the Adventurers Guild. Kong Seal looked through the listings only to find these quests were of almost no help to him, so he could only go looking for the one kind of quest he was sure existed. Kong Seal remembered that near a corner of the guild, there was a person who always secretly watched the adventurers coming and going. After spotting the target, Kong Seal took the initiative to walk over. "You don't look like an ordinary person. May I ask what you're doing here?" The man chuckled. "I'm looking for people who can help me with a job." He said he had a big deal and needed to transport goods to Envara. Therefore, he needed a few people to guard the wagon. But Kong Seal's insight skill clearly told him the other party was lying. After pondering for a moment, Kong Seal still spoke. "I can take this job." This scene was seen clearly by two people hiding in the shadows. Although Kong Seal had been deliberately lowering his presence, the mage robe on him was still too conspicuous. The two men quickly judged that Kong Seal was definitely not an ordinary player. In a place like this, the most terrifying people are not the powerful, but those who don't care about anything. Thus, a plot against Kong Seal quietly began to brew. Soon, it was the next day. The players' downtime ended. Because this vacation lasted a full month, many players had already lost their sense of tension toward adventuring. As the teleportation array lit up, Kong Seal's third adventure officially began. Quest name, Novira Transport Escort. In the south of Pandia lie many natural treasures. Among them is a great silent forest. Kong Seal's job was to escort the wagon to Novara near the Great Forest, but a band of horse bandits infested the road there, and once encountered, things would not end simply. After inheriting the first piece's memories, Kong Seal still remembered that Snowman completed this quest before undertaking the Five Brothers adventure. But when he piloted the second piece, that piece failed to complete this quest. This discrepancy stirred a trace of unease in Kong Seal's heart. At this point, the merchant introduced to Kong Seal the other teammates for this adventure. "I'm Beck. Thank you. I'll be counting on you on the road. This is my good brother named Seo Jean Shiel." Kongyo recognized at a glance that they were the two who had secretly watched him at the Adventurers Guild. He couldn't be bothered to care. Right now, he only wanted to quickly find traces belonging to the second piece, the merchant added. In fact, the three of them were just backups. The actual number of escorts was already sufficient, but the world is unpredictable. I hired you additionally, just in case. You only need to stay alert and step in if anything seems off. After hearing this, Beck Sananu and Seo Jinyo felt the job was absurdly easy, and suspected Kong Seal already knew this was a free money quest. Little did they know their petty schemes had long been seen through by Kong Seal. They rashly joined without understanding the quest at all. Truly, cabs unafraid of tigers. You have to know, The difficulty of a series quest often plays tricks. At first, it looks like the most ordinary job, but by the end, it morphs into an extremely difficult stage that even Kong Seal has to grit his teeth to face. But he had to keep moving forward because this adventure definitely hid traces of the second piece. Along the way, the two sized up Kong Seal with hostile eyes. Their goal was nothing more than two possibilities. Either they were saboteurs in the quest, specializing in wrecking party runs, or they were killers targeting gear. So-called saboteurs are those who scheme to disrupt the quest flow and wipe the party. But from their behavior, they looked more like reckless oaths barging into a quest without a care. On the road, they asked about Kong Seal's class. When they learned he was a summoner, they openly scoffed. In their view, since you've come to this land of opportunity, you should have grand ambitions. Best to choose classes that charge head-on with fists, spears, and swords, hiding behind summoned beasts and watching others fight. What kind of man is that? Kong Seal couldn't be bothered to explain. They then asked whether Kong Seal had joined a guild and vigorously recommended their own Predators Guild. They even grinned and said that once this adventure ended, Kong Seal had to come find them at the guild. Kong Seal naturally saw through these insidious plans. Such a thing would never happen. The Novira Transport Escort quest was both the adventure the second piece failed to complete and a pivotal quest that once completely altered the difficulty. Kong Seal remembered that both the first and second pieces encountered two unusual troubles when they took this quest, and on the same day at the same time. So the probability of a mishap this time was very high. One could even say it was bound to happen because this adventure was designed that way from the start. After traveling all day, they found a place to rest. The merchant took out fine wine he had prepared in advance and warmly entertained everyone. The others were quickly enchanted by the aroma. Only Kong Seal's insight skill noticed that strange scent coming from the wine. So, as not to alert the snake by scaring the grass, he pretended to down it in one gulp, but in fact had his shadow quietly transfer the wine into the soil some distance away. After food and drink, the merchant suddenly apologized to everyone. The original plan had changed slightly. Before heading to Invara, they had to detour to another place. Though he couldn't change this, he was willing to pay triple the original reward, meaning each person could get 600 G. Hearing that number, everyone except Kong Seal was overjoyed. But just as the merchant was about to continue explaining, a volley of cold arrows suddenly shot out from the depths of the woods. Fortunately, Kong Seal reacted quickly and immediately found cover. The others weren't so lucky. One of them was even pierced straight through the neck by a sharp arrow. Bek Sanangu angrily demanded of the merchant what on earth was going on. As soon as he approached, a sharp dagger was pressed to his neck. The merchant himself was wounded at this point and panted as he said, "If you don't want to die, do as I say. Get on the wagon now. As long as we shake the pursuers and rush into the great forest, they won't be able to find us." Bek, thank you, was about to refuse when the dagger's tip traced a shallow cut across his neck. Don't forget who paid to hire you. They had no choice but to drive off in a panic, fleeing embarrassment before the chase closed in. System prompt popped up. Novira Transport Escort quest content has changed. New quest. The carriage is moving. Staring at their dead companion's corpse, Bek, thank you. And the other man turned pale with fear. What the hell is going on? Wasn't this a low-difficulty quest? They turned and threatened Kong Seal. You join us and think of a way to escape together. We have to stick together to survive. Kong Seal ignored their clamor. Seeing this, Beak's Thank You drew his sword, ready to teach Kong Seal a lesson. But the next second, dizziness struck, and the two of them collapsed with a thud. They thought Kong Seal had made a move, little knowing he merely offered a mild reminder. Don't eat what strangers give you. Only then did the two fools realize their real enemy had never been Kong Seal. Yet they still stubbornly suspected that Kong Seal was in league with the merchant. Watching the pursuers draw closer from behind, Kong Seal knew they would never get away like this. So he cast summoning and called forth Jhamad. Seeing the giant monster appear, Bek thanked you and his companion were utterly petrified. Isn't that the terrifying chieftain of the mountain ogres? Back then, our entire party couldn't bring him down, which is why we chose to abandon that quest. This kid actually summoned him. Kong Seal didn't kill them because he knew they would die sooner or later from their own stupidity. There was no need for him to do it himself. He and Jhamad jumped off the wagon first. The two behind were still begging Kong Seal to take them along. Not dispatching them was already Kong Seal's final mercy. In fact, the only road ahead was already riddled with traps. The merchant, careless for a moment, had a horse's leg caught by a trip rope, and the entire wagon suddenly overturned, crashing into a shattered mess. The merchant scrambled to his feet, swaying as he readied for a fight. The pursuers arrived right then as well. "Hey, Cujo! You still think you can escape the palm of our hand?" Cujo sneered back. "Of course! I thought I could get away. That's why I ran, you idiot. Hey, your mouth is as foul as ever. Where are the map and the deciphering notes? Right here in my arms. If you've got the guts, come get them yourself. In that case, let me bid you farewell in advance." No sooner were the words out than the two fell into a brawl. Only if they both suffered heavy losses could he reap the greatest benefit. This was his third time experiencing the carriage's moving adventure, so he knew the truth of it very well. This quest was far more complex than it appeared on the surface. Among the ruin hunters camped near Novra, the most renowned was Bargo. A subordinate who had long been dissatisfied with him named Cujo accidentally obtained a map to another ruin while exploring one site. He secretly took the map and tried to decipher it on his own. When Borgo found out, he immediately sent people to capture him. However, Cujo had already fled to Kongori. Helpless, Borgo's men could only camp near the great forest and wait for a chance to act. According to the deciphering notes, opening the ruin's entrance requires sacrificing 5 living people. So, from the start, Kong Seal and the others weren't escorts. They were offerings. The wine was poisoned to keep them from even lifting a finger and make them go meekly to their deaths. But if the two sides slaughtered each other and both were wiped out, there would be no offerings left. Kong Seal's first character barely escaped by restoring his body. The second character, however, made a different choice at the options. The fight quickly decided a victor. Cujo, after all, was experienced and adept at delivering killing blows amid chaos. But after taking everyone out, he himself was a spent arrow. When Kong Seal appeared, Cujo instinctively wanted him to save his life. But Kong Seal said coldly, "You're already a dead man." Cujo gave a wry smile. "True. I've lost so much blood. I really can't live." Kong Seal reached out, just about to take the map from him, when Cujo weakly said, "Want to hear something interesting?" Kong Seal shook his head and refused. After all, he knew far more of the inside story than Cujo. "Then I'll tell you just one thing. Very soon, a huge monster unlike a human will come here. When it does, well, die." Kong Seal fished the map from his arms and unfolded it. Although the contents were broadly the same, the line of deciphering differed completely from the version in his memory. Cujo trembled all over as he said, "You want the treasure in that ruin too, don't you? But that place has long been targeted by Borgo." Kong Seal didn't understand what he was getting at. "And so you will eventually be just like me and yield to desire. System options popped up. The ruin is deep within the great forest. How do you choose?" Clutching the map in his hand, Kong Seal said slowly, "I won't yield to desire. I will master it." He chose the last option, seized the map, and head straight for the ruin. Not long after Kong Seal left, Bek Sanangu and Seojin Chiel crawled out from the wreckage of the wagon. From afar came the neat rhythm of hoofbeats. They were shaking with fear, but with the drugs still in effect. They couldn't run at all. The ones who arrived were the ruin hunter Borgo's squad. After a round of searching, they found Cujo's corpse. Borgo grabbed his head and hoisted the body up, rummaged through his clothes, but came up empty. At that moment, Beck, Sankyu, and the other were dragged up. "I'll tell you anything. Please spare me." "Then tell me where the map went." "The map? I don't know." Before he finished, Borgo brought an axe down and chopped his head off on the spot. The sight made the other man wet himself in terror. Under the crushing menace of Borgo's vicious gaze, he hurriedly begged for mercy. "I don't know about any map, but I know who took something. Back then, there was a guy called Snowman riding the wagon with us. If his corpse isn't here, then he's the one who took it." At this moment, a subordinate also remembered. "Right, someone did escape when the wagon overturned. I even sent 2 people after him, and they were both crushed flat by something unknown." After extracting all the information he wanted, Bargo gave a cold smile, and with the same single axe stroke split the speaker clean in 2. Meanwhile, Kong Seal had already reached the ruins gate. Seeing the 3 massive boulders pressed tightly together, he knew the mechanism was nearby. Sure enough, after a search, he found a statue. Rotating the statue clockwise, golden lines surfaced on the faces of the 3 rocks. Then the strange pattern was refracted onto the gate. Just as Kong Seal was about to approach, the ruin door system prompt popped up. "Bargo uses steel peladons. Bargo uses conjecture. Bargo uses barrier break. Kong Seal's heart tightened, and he immediately felt his life was in danger. In the next instant, a fast-flying arrow was blocked by Jhamad. It turned out Borgo had tracked him all the way here. System prompt. You successfully evaded the ambush. Settling rewards. Series quest rewards will be distributed upon full completion. With no choice, Kong Seal accepted the fourth adventure. Quest name, Hall of R. Objective, shake off the pursuers, escape the Hall of R, or eliminate all pursuers. Time limit 24 hours. At this moment, viewers outside the world of eternity were spamming. How did he find the mechanism so fast? And he made it look so easy. Meanwhile, Kong Seal had already come to a heavy iron door. According to the deciphering notes, to open this door requires the blood of 5 innocents. He merely gave a cold laugh, then tore those notes to shreds. The chat exploded. What is he doing? Wasn't that deciphering hard one? Is he crazy? Only Kong Seal knew that deciphering was the wrong version. The real version recorded not 5 human sacrifices, but 5 drops of blood. As he let his own blood drip, the iron door slowly opened. He smiled with confidence. System prompt, viewer with ID, they're coming. Tip you 200 madness. Just as Kong Seal entered the hall, not long after, Borgo's group also arrived at the door. He called out his short subordinate. Kurjan, you've analyzed the ruins traps. This time, you lead the way. If you dare deceive me, you know the consequences, don't you? Absolutely not. Please believe me. What Kujo took was just a notebook that wasn't fully deciphered. With that, he carefully walked toward the altar. Just as he was about to cut his finger, he suddenly saw 5 drops of blood left on the altar. He was too shocked to speak. He had no idea how Kong Seal knew the notes in Kojo's hands were wrong. After learning the situation, Borgo also became interested in Snowman, and killing intent surged. Whatever the case, we must break through the mechanism before he does. At this moment, Kong Seal had reached a corridor full of mechanisms. The walls on both sides were covered in button traps. The wall directly ahead was filled with obscure ancient script. System options popped up. The only selectable one was number 6. Have an archaeologist or sorcerer decipher the ancient script. After completing the deciphering, the ancient text read, "Maintain humility and restraint and give thanks for the grace bestowed by Lord Isoken." Kong Seal had chosen this option before. So-called humility and restraint in practice meant that whether praying or prostrating, as long as the rites were observed, it would do. He first tossed a pebble and let it roll along the ground. As shown in the second piece's memories, the floor gave no reaction and was safe. On Borgo's side, who was pursuing relentlessly yet could never catch up to Kong Seal, fury was boiling. Some began to suspect that Kurjin had long colluded with Kujo to secretly provide the correct deciphering. Although Borgo was suspicious too, they still needed Kurjin to get through the trial. Upon learning that this stage required crawling along the floor like a devotee, he grew impatient. "You're not messing with me, are you? There are button traps here, and disarming them will take time. If so, that guy will." Before he could finish, Borgo cut him off. "I know. We'll do as you say. If we don't send someone to verify first, that's even more dangerous. Right now, that guy is moving forward too. I hate having anyone ahead of me. This time, I'll believe you once more." Xun, trembling, lay prone and inched forward, cursing Kujo to high heaven in his heart. He had to find a way to survive. Suddenly, a terrible realization struck him, and he froze in place. Noticing something was wrong, Borgo hurriedly asked what had happened. Kurjin explained, shaking. "This might be the worst-case scenario. If that guy has already reached the heart of the ruin, he can control the mechanisms of the earlier trials." Before the words were out, buttons shot from the walls like raindrops, and the traps activated. Chaos erupted in an instant. The lucky to survive Borgo found that no fewer than 7 subordinates beside him were gone, Kurjin included. He laughed in fury. That guy called Snowman is really interesting. At this time, Kong Seal had reached the 5th trial, a sealed chamber with no door. He knew there had to be a trap here as well. So he closed his eyes and strode forward with confidence. The instant his eyes shut, the writing in the room surfaced clearly in his mind. Close your eyes. Walk toward the Ismoken in your heart. A normal person would have to be insane to proceed with eyes closed where there are traps. But Kong Seal knew that was exactly the way through. According to the deciphering he possessed, there are 8 beings called Ismokin. 8 symbolizes that mysterious native god. Therefore, the priests of Ismokin had to walk 8 steps here with eyes closed. But that was based on priests with an average height of over 2 m. For Kong Seal, he had to take 9 steps before opening his eyes. And indeed, just as in his memories, relying on the first piece's memories, he advanced smoothly from the first trial to the 8th. Throughout, the viewers were so tense they didn't dare make a sound. Some even suspected someone had leaked the answers. Kong Seal's account thus received generous madness tips from high rollers. Now he had reached the final trial. Even he couldn't help feeling a bit nervous because he could sense he was very close to the end point of the second piece. The reason he could conquer this ruin was that his memory still retained some of the clues. Zilak Kong's second piece, a piece that lived only a brief life. He always wore an innocent smile and loved children and plants. With the memories flowing, Kong Seal entered the 10th trial, the Hall of Light. Elsewhere, Borgo's team lost another 7 men. Following the erroneous deciphering Kuryan left, they used 7 lives to test out the correct number of steps. By now, Borgo had no interest in the ruin itself. He only wanted to catch up to Kong Seal and tear him apart with his own hands. Meanwhile, Kong Seal was searching everywhere for traces of the second piece until he saw a skeleton on the ground. Kong Seal recognized in an instant who it was, Ziliak. At the same time, a strange sensation welled up in him again. Exactly the same as when he first found the first piece. A stabbing pain shot through his head. System prompt. Zilak's legacy has begun. In a daze, Kong Seal saw Zilak's final moments. He died from a poison needle. At the moment of death, he realized the painting on the ceiling had been solved. Ismoken is the god who commands light. Unfortunately, there was no longer anyone who could take the next step in his stead. After the legacy concluded, Kong Seal gained a new ability, Ruin Predator Effect. Chance to discover hidden ruins plus 10%. If you become the first to break through a secret ruin, extra rewards plus 30%. Kong Seal picked up Zilak's scarf and tied it around himself, his gaze firm. I will carry out the next step according to your will. After losing Zilak back then, Kong Seal meticulously studied the Hall of Restraint to protect his other pieces. Later, he equipped almost all subsequent pieces with appraisal and conjecture. Even now, as he enters the world of eternity, he continues along this path. The system once again popped up 3 options. Kong Seal knew very well that the 4 mirrors were the key to the final trial. Each mirror could be adjusted in 4 directions. What Zilak saw before he died was the image of a goddess on the ceiling. The answer was already determined. Turn all the mirrors to face the ceiling is Moken. I offer you the light of all things. Please open the way for me. The instant the words fell, the mechanism behind the goddess painting activated. A spiral staircase slowly descended from within and extended upward. System prompt. You have cleared the final trial of the Hall of Restraint. When time ends or when you choose to claim rewards, this adventure will be settled. Kong Seal followed the stairs all the way up. The audience was already boiling over, and the madness tips for him climbed and climbed. This is like watching a movie. I'm so excited. I need the bathroom. At the top of the stairs was a new door. Pushing it open and stepping inside, what met his eyes was a solemn statue. Stranger, welcome to Ismochin's resting place. Ismochin will grant you gifts. Please use them well. A stone door beside it opened, revealing piles of gold coins and treasures within. Once chosen, you cannot repent. Choose carefully. Faced with a dazzling array of rewards, Kong Seal even felt as if he'd become an Aladdin who refuses treasure. But he had no idea which to choose. Just then, a system prompt popped up. The carriage is moving. Adventure settlement complete. For the next 10 minutes, appraisal skill is temporarily enhanced. Kong Seal immediately saw the attributes of all the items. The viewers in the barrage also chimed in, offering suggestions. And he simply reached into the heap and picked the plainest-looking blindfold because only he knew it was the inside blindfold. In Pandia, there are races born with special eyes. Different special eyes have different acquisition methods and abilities. Kong Seal hadn't expected to obtain a pair of eyes so early, and among all special eyes, the inside eyes fit his style especially well. The statue asked him if there was anything else he wanted. After receiving a negative answer, the statue fell silent for a moment and added another reward chest. Ismone favors those who understand restraint. This unexpected surprise left Kong Seal quite satisfied. He immediately put on the inside blindfold. He knew he could only take 1 item from the treasury, but he hadn't anticipated that activating the inside eyes would be so painful. It felt like his eyeballs were being burned alive by fire. As the blindfold burned away completely, the inside eyes were fully activated. The world was renewed in his sight. Although the process was harsher than expected, with the inside eyes, he could at least greatly reduce the probability of getting swept into random events. Just then, Borgo barged into the final trial as well. At this point, he had only one subordinate left, the last one. Clearly, everyone else on the way had already become stepping stones. So, you haven't escaped yet. I'll chop you into 8 pieces and toss you on the plains to feed the wolves. That subordinate was so entranced by the treasure that he could hardly move his feet. He didn't even have time to touch anything before Borgo asked him to death. Everything here is mine. You being able to follow me this far is already a miracle. Shut up. Everything here is mine, including your life. With that, he grabbed the gold coins on the ground and threw that suit of armor over himself as expected of a treasure. It even auto-fits to the body. Excellent. Just putting on this armor gives me such power. I'll use it to crush you so you won't even have a chance to breathe. Kong Seal merely sneered. Looks like no one told you what this place is. As he spoke, the statue behind him gave a cold voice. Greedy one, you will pay for not understanding restraint. Borgo didn't care at all. Greed is the drive that keeps me alive. If I weren't greedy, I couldn't have come here. No one can punish me. System prompt. Ismokin's curse descends. Borgo's all attributes minus 50%. Ismokin's wraith seized control of his body. With a roar, he hurled a spear at Kong Seal. But for Kong Seal, blessed with the inside eyes, the attack trajectory was crystal clear. The spear was easily dodged. Then he charged at Kong Seal only to be intercepted by Jhamad. I wondered who it was. Turns out you're just someone who can't even control his own body. Kong Seal noticed that compared to before, his HUD now displayed lengthy explanatory text. That was information parsed by the inside eyes. Jhamad and Borgo grappled with each other. From the situation, Jhamad clearly had the upper hand. Borgo could hardly fight back at all. But by now, the statue had marked him as the hall's guardian in order to guard its treasure. He had lost his reason. Jhamad showed no mercy. I just need to beat you until you can't stand. However, Borgo had already begun learning to use the power of that armor. Seeing this, even Kong Seal frowned, uncertain whether Jhamad could still suppress him. At this moment, Borgo's special ability, Critical Strike, activated. Impact of the next attack ×2 comes with knockback if it hits terrain. Additional damage will be dealt. He brought a hammer down, sending Jhamad hurtling and slamming hard into the wall. Then, step by step, he advanced on Kong Seal. Now it's your turn. What a pity to die in a place like this. Kong Seal only curled his lip in disdain. What are you laughing at? You should be too scared to laugh. Are you laughing out of anger because you can't accept death? Kong Seal said calmly. I haven't lost yet. Hearing this, Borgo picked up a nearby sword to behead Kong Seal. But behind him, Jhamad had already gotten back to his feet. He seized Borgo's wrist and sneered. Stupid creature. You have ambition, yet you cannot see fear. At this moment, Jhamad had switched to quake stance, and his strength rose another tear. Then let me show you what fear is. With a single-handed squeeze, he snapped Borgo's arm. I'm not like you. When I'm angry, I erupt. Then he stomped down and crushed the bones of Borgo's foot. The successive blows made Borgo cough up blood. I'll kill you, you savage giant freak! If you'd seen me in life, you wouldn't say that, because every human I met in the end begged me for a swift end. Even with all the treasures assembled, Vargo still couldn't deal any decent damage. You may have drive, but you have no order. You may be fast, but you lack will. So rude and frivolous. In the end, with a single punch, he sent Borgo smashing into the wall. Up until the moment of death, Borgo never understood why he lost. Jhamad only shook his head. This world is full of things that cannot be understood, and precisely because of that, it's more interesting. Realizing the situation was hopeless, Borgo launched one last desperate attack. But every strike was blocked by the rocks surrounding Jhamad. A massive hand seized his head, and a sharp spear pierced through his chest. At this moment, Borgo finally showed true fear. Please stop, please. So, you finally said those words too. But it's already too late. As soon as he finished speaking, he squeezed hard and completely crushed Borgo's skull. System prompt. You have defeated his Machin's Wraith Ruin Hunter, Borgo. Achievement, Quell the Rage obtained. Title, Wraith Repeller obtained. Additional rewards granted. Only then did Kong Seal truly breathe a sigh of relief. Worthy of being one of the top great chieftains in the history of the Rockmuller tribe. The audience erupted into raucous cheers for Jhamad. Kong Seal couldn't wait to open the reward chest. Inside, besides a large amount of gold coins, was also the treasure Borgo had just used, reappearing before Kong's seal in a purified state. The statue spoke again. One who has overcome desire. You must possess a will as hard as steel. You are a man of steel with a heart of icy flame. Do not stop. Keep moving forward and let your light bloom. You will illuminate this world. With that, the statue completely collapsed, turning into pure energy that swirled around Jhamad. Mountain's fist underwent subtle changes and began to automatically accumulate divine power. Jhamad achieved the feat Guardian of the Hall and received a new title as Mochin's Great Warrior. However, he didn't seem to like this blessing much. After all, the one he originally served was the Earth Dragon tanked. He instinctively rejected the blessing of an unfamiliar native god. Besides that, there was the suit of armor he hadn't cracked. Its durability remained unharmed under his blows and was rated by the system as Malefic Tier. In Pandia, equipment tiers from low to high are roughly junk, common, special, rare, treasure, divine, malefic, or, and so on. Among them, malefic refers to cursed yet highly potent gear that requires specific classes to use or must be purified before it can function normally. This armor has already been purified and can now be worn safely. It's very suitable as Karuna's armor. With it, Karuna's defense will far surpass before. In addition, the titles obtained this time are extremely valuable. After confirming he hadn't missed any rewards, Kong's seal decisively chose to end the adventure. At this time, his score had climbed to 599,300 points, still firmly at the top of the leaderboard. Next came another month of downtime. After returning to Kongori, the whole city seemed unusually quiet. It seems there weren't many class changers who finished their adventures at the same time as Kong's seal. On the way back to the inn, he suddenly sensed someone tailing him. His first suspicion, naturally, was the Predator Guild. After all, the 4 who set out with him were all dead. But logically, they shouldn't have gotten the news this fast since Kong's seal was among the first to return to the city. With that thought, he slipped quickly into an alley. When the man chased in, Kong's seal had already set up an ambush. "Talk. Why are you following me?" To his surprise, the other party opened by directly naming Kong's seal as the non-public player ranked number 1. During the period when the entry order shifted, only you passed through this gate because I've been waiting here the whole time. Seeing no malice, Kong's seal lowered his guard for the moment and asked what he wanted. The man said he needed Kong's seal's help. After a brief exchange, he rolled up his sleeve and revealed a strange right hand. At first glance, it looked like a rotting arm, but on closer look, the skin was unnaturally smooth and hard. As it turned out, his older sister died during the second adventure. At the time, there were too many ogres. His sister was driven to the cliff's edge and about to fall. He reached out and grabbed her, trying to pull her back, but she refused to drag him down and let go of her own accord. In that instant, he triggered an accident and gained a special constitution, Possessed Hand. After hearing this, Kong's seal understood. The man named Han Yomang wasn't cursed, but had awakened a rare constitution. Used properly, Possessed Hand could bring tremendous power. The premise being either resolve the vengeful spirit in the hand or have a high priest purify it. Otherwise, this hand would always belong to the ghost. But if one day he could fully reclaim the hand, then the possessed hand would become his trump card. So, you want me to help you restore this hand? No. The one I want to ask you to help is my younger sister. Since that happened, she's been distancing herself from me and joined a guild. Did she join a dangerous guild? Do you know the Justice Guild? It's one of the earliest founded guilds. They claim the guild has the number 1 ranked adventurer and have recruited countless people by that claim. But Han Yomang knew the real top non-public was the man before him, so the Justice Guild was lying. In that guild, all team rosters are decided by the officers, so if anyone inside is dissatisfied with them, they're made into targets. If you quit on your own, you get retaliated against in the city. There are even recent rumors they've allied with a notorious guild, Kong's seal reminded him. Rumors aren't necessarily reliable. These things are internal intel my sister confirmed with her own eyes. She's begged me more than once to get her out. After hearing this, Kong's seal only felt a bit helpless. Even if all this were true, it wasn't enough reason for him to act. He wasn't a crusader of justice. Everyone has their own pressing matters. Mr. Han Yomang, beyond my own goals, I don't have time to take care of too many other things. Haimang could hardly believe it. Why? You're so strong. Your adventurer score is twice that of number 2. Doesn't that mean you're 10 times, even dozens of times stronger? You could easily deal with those people. Before he could finish, Kong's seal cut him off. Mr. Han Yoyang, I didn't get strong to help those who hide behind the strong and wait for salvation. You must save yourself. The path to saving your sister shouldn't be figured out by me, but by you. I can't save everyone around me." Before leaving, Kong Seal added, "Also, your hand may not be a curse. If you want to solve your sister's problem, start by shedding your guilt. That's all I'll say." He knew full well that his help alone wouldn't let Han Yo-young survive here. In this world, crisis can arrive at any time, and Kong Seal's time was limited. He couldn't step in every time. However, he hesitated too, because the possessed hand itself had tremendous potential. As long as Han Yo-young unraveled the secret of the hand, finding his sister wouldn't be difficult for him, and that hand might also become a good card for Kong Seal in the future. After much thought, Kong Seal decided to keep an eye on the man. If he wasn't consumed by helplessness and chose to change himself, he might have a chance to become an ally. After that, Kong Seal went to the Information Guild, spent 150 gold to buy negative intel on the Justice Guild. After reading it, he found everything Han Yo-young said was true. In fact, what he knew was just the tip of the iceberg. The problem was even worse than he'd imagined. The notorious guild mentioned therein was very likely the Predator Guild. So Kong Seal spent another 100 gold to buy dirt on the Predator Guild. He couldn't understand. Since the problem was already this serious, why was no one stepping in? The informant said, "Coolly, intervention only happens in cases of citizen class changers being killed. So, you're saying they know the inside story but choose silence? They have rules of their own. That's just my personal view. I won't charge extra for that bit." After reading, Kong Seal burned all the papers to ash. Then he paid another 20 gold to have the Information Guild covertly tail Han Yo-young for a week. The next day, Kong Seal returned to the job training center. He'd planned to improve his skills, but was surprised to find that the fifth option, which had always been grayed out and unselectable, had now lit up. After he clicked it, the trainer told him, "Master Summoner Chow went missing after heading to Navara because Navara is a dangerous place." He was very worried. Master Chow has been missing for a month. With his strength, he shouldn't have been harmed by those ruffians, but who can say? Kong Seal stroked his chin and thought. Strictly speaking, he didn't have to take this side quest now. He still needed to complete 6 more adventures to have a chance to trigger the Awakening storyline. Though time wasn't tight, if he kept delaying, he might miss it. "Do you want me to help look into news of Chow?" As expected, the system immediately popped up. Hidden Adventure. The missing summoner quest objective in Navara. Find traces of the shadow summoner Chow. Time unlimited. Coming back to himself, Kong Seal didn't forget his primary purpose for coming. Continued strengthening his existing skills. He currently had 4 ability points. Naturally, he upgraded shadow summoning first. After upgrading, he could now summon Karuna and Jhamad simultaneously. Inheritance efficiency also rose, and both raid bosses could exert a higher proportion of their power. That meant he alone equaled an army. Having come this far, Kong Seal could almost be sure it would be hard to grow much stronger in Kongori. The remaining adventure quests here were either inefficient or poorly rewarded. He planned to leave the city after dealing with the Predator Guild. Elsewhere, the Predator Guild finally confirmed that Seo Jiniel and Baek Sananku were dead. The guildmaster named White Shark was the number 2 ranked non-public. Although he didn't know how Kong Seal had taken out 4 people, he wasn't in a hurry to act because for now they needed to act in concert with the Justice Guild. Moving rashly against Kong Seal would only cause trouble. At that moment, a subordinate warned, "Boss, those Justice Guild guys don't look very reliable. Not sure if working with them will cause problems." White Shark gave a sinister grin. "You think they trust us? We're just using each other and pretending not to know it. The leader of the Justice Guild, Yongwan Chul, doesn't have the force needed to rule his own people. And if we want to expand our business in Kongori, we have to put on a show of helping Yongwan Chul. In the end, we'll just swallow the Justice Guild whole. We'll devour guild after guild, and then we can openly run the human trafficking business. That's how this world is. Where there's no law, violence is the rule. Those who know how to use violence stand at the top." Before he finished, a subordinate rushed in flustered. "Boss, the Justice Guild is calling you over. They say some lunatic barged into the guild alone and is causing trouble. That person was none other than Han Yo-young come to rescue his sister. He had finally figured it out that he had to rely on his own strength to save her. But reality wasn't as simple as he imagined. The Justice Guild's leader, young Wu Shaw, warned Han no coldly. "This guild isn't a place you come and go as you please. The world isn't as simple as you think. Since you already know some inside matters, don't dream of walking away unscathed. If you insist on leaving, first, you are not allowed to leak anything you know. Second, you must compensate us for our investment in you. The time, money, and manpower we put into you add up to at least 5,000 gold coins. Han No-Yul roared, I didn't do anything wrong. Why do I have to pay so much? Because the Justice Guild is without a doubt an interest group. We have the right to recoup our investment in you in full. Facing members pressing in step by step, Han No-Yul finally shouted the truth. Youngwon Chil is a fraud. You've all been deceived. There isn't any non-public number one here at all. Serving the weak is all fake. He'll only sell us off or use us as shields. But after hearing that, they still wore blank faces because they'd known all along and were just playing dumb. Seeing the situation turn bad, Han Yeong stepped in front of his sister only to be kicked flying. Next came a merciless beating. Han No-Yo was also slapped hard by Yun Wan Cha. Seeing his sister humiliated, Han Yeomi Yang completely snapped. His black right arm flickered with a cold blue light. Possessed Hand awakened at that moment. Black Hand assisted movement, gain astonishing movement speed for a short time, and greatly reduced the time to adapt to new motions. He was so fast that the enemy couldn't even catch his shadow. Young Shil hurriedly had his men notify the Predator Guild. Only at that moment did Han Yong finally understand this hand was never a curse. It was a gift left to him by his sister. After getting word, White Shark rushed to the scene at once. With just a few glances at him, Han Yong concluded the man before him wasn't the non-public number one he was looking for. Yet, even with the possessed hand facing the number two non-public, Hayomi still had no power to fight back. In despair, he asked a soul-arching question. You're so strong. Why do you live like this? White Shark spread his hands. Hey, kid, don't make me sound like some villain. Let me teach you foolish siblings. What matters now isn't good and evil, but strength and weakness. The strong are right, the weak are wrong. From now on, violence will override everything. Enraged, Han Yo-Yong slashed a sword at his neck, but White Shark blocked it with ease. Every move you make looks snail-slow to me. With a single move, he snapped the long sword. Just as White Shark was about to put an end to it all, from outside the door came a knock. Kong Seal had arrived. After obtaining the intel, he chose to come in person. After waiting a long time with no one opening the door, Kong Seal simply laid his cards on the table. I know what's going on in there. Open the door. The two guildmasters exchanged a glance and decided to take the opportunity to eliminate Kong Seal as well. When the door opened, Kong Seal saw Han Yo-Yang lying on the floor covered in blood. Mr. Han Yong, are you okay? Hiomi was momentarily stunned to see him. Didn't you refuse my request? Kongiel answered calmly. I'm not here because of your request. I just want to tie up loose ends here before I leave. But I am curious. Why did you end up like this? Han Yo-Yang said in a trembling voice. I tried. I really did my best. Gave it everything I had, but this is still how it turned out. It was precisely this resolve that made Kong Seal look at him a little differently. I think I get it. I'm taking these two with me. Let them go. Kong Seal couldn't be bothered to beat around the bush. Young Wuxia thought he was crazy. Do you know where you are? Only White Shark vaguely guessed his identity. Hey, friend, you're that guy they call Snowman, aren't you? I've been looking for you. Beck, thank you. And Seo Jin Shiel, were they killed by you? Even if Kongiel denied it, he wouldn't believe him. Since you're done talking, let me ask something too. Kong looked around. I already know everything you've done. Anyone here want to repent? The next second, the Moonlight Knight and Jhamad appeared before him simultaneously. The sight left White Shark dumbstruck. That giant. Could it be you? Who the hell are you? The room fell deathly silent. Could it be you're the monster with a score twice that of number 2? Young Wan Shaw was at once terrified and excited. Even with the situation extremely unfavorable to him, he still tried to recruit Kong Seal. We've been looking for you for a long time. Didn't expect you to come to us. I'll cut to the chase. Will you join us? I can give you the best terms, Kong Seal asked with interest. Let's hear it then. Yuan instantly switched to speech mode. We've all been thrown into a world with no law and no rules. But crisis is opportunity, isn't it? The era where birth decides fate is over. We will remake the rules, become pioneers. We will take in those with nowhere to go, grow our power, stand above them, and control everything like those who discovered the new world back then. Kong Seal asked, why do you insist on standing above others? Because we have power. Those with power should call the shots. That's the new rule of this world. Violence is authority, Kong Seal replied calmly. There's some logic in what you say, but you know, above violence, there is even greater violence. Besides, I'm not interested in that kind of power game. From start to finish, I have only one question. Have you reflected at all? I already see the answer clearly. So my answer is decided as well. As soon as he finished, he gave the command to his summons. Everyone present, except the Han siblings. Killed them all. The Moonlight Knight and Jhamad shot out like arrows from the string. Screams rose one after another in the guild hall. A bunch of small-time bullies were no match for them. Only White Shark could barely exchange a couple of blows with Jhamad, but that was all. Soon, Jhamad grew bored of the game. He clamped down on White Shark's wrist. The way you struggle is like a worm on the ground. Then, with a hard yank, he tore off both of White Shark's arms. Above violence, there is greater violence. Not a bad line. Unfortunately, you're not the one standing at the top. White Shark begged frantically, but still had his neck snapped. Seeing the tide turn, young Wall scrambled to flee, but the Moonlight Knight blocked his path. Kongil decided to leave this one to Han Yomang. Even with death at his doorstep, young WH kept arguing. I'm not the only one like me in this world. Everyone is devouring each other because there's no law, no rules. People like me who try to set new rules will keep appearing. Kong Seal didn't deny it. New rules will definitely appear one after another. Then let them make them. I'll keep destroying rules until there's one that even I am satisfied with. So you're just like us. You're a monster who wants to do as he pleases. A monster, perhaps. In the end, Han Yang personally ended Yunwan Cho's life. Kong Seal's performance once again drew a frenzy of tips from the viewers. Soon after, news of the Predator Guild and the Justice Guild being wiped out spread through every street and alley, and Kong Seal cleverly shifted the blame for the incident's instigation onto Han Yomang. He and Han Yongyong followed each other through the community system. From then on, no matter where they were, they could pass messages to each other immediately. Once the possessed hand is fully developed, they will meet again. That was the price for Kong Seal's help. In the future, he would get a payoff sufficient to recoup the cost. 3 days later was the day Kong Seal planned to leave. He rolled the travel luck die. Unexpectedly, the die landed on 2, an extremely ill number system prompt. Your adventure will become quite dangerous. But if you can overcome all misfortunes and break through the adventure, you will gain greater opportunities. A bead of cold sweat formed on Kong Seal's forehead. A seasoned adventurer must learn to face misfortune head-on. If you can relocate your base with ease without doing anything, in the end, you'll be harvested by bad luck. He gazed into the distance, his eyes growing ever more resolute. He only hoped the danger this time wouldn't be too outrageous. In his current state, as long as no sudden adventure is triggered, there shouldn't be much trouble. After all, he now had Karuna and Jhamad under his command. Ordinary quests could hardly threaten him anymore. Consider it a chance to trade for more rewards. The second city was the ruin hunter metropolis, Novira. It sat near a vast forest dense with ruins, the only urban hub there. Novira's economy was sustained by the livelihoods of ruin hunters. Thus, ruin hunting was regarded as one of its most important industries. In ruin hunting, the most vital resources were undoubtedly manpower and combat classes. The influx of class changers was a rare blessing for Novara. For that reason, class changers and Impendia's native residents could coexist here in relative harmony. Overall, this city gave Kong Seal a good first impression. He planned to visit the Adventurers Association first to gauge the local community vibe and inquire about Chow. But after asking around, no one had seen this summoner until a woman spoke up. I've seen her. She first came here about a month ago. I told her quite a bit. Kong Seal pressed for details, but she deliberately played dumb. Only when he produced a gold coin did she remember. She was looking for a room she could use as a lab, so I introduced one to her. In that house, a family had died before. It never sold, so it was often rented to outsiders. I don't know if she ended up signing. Following the lead, Kong Seal arrived at the house's door. It was locked from the inside. He climbed in through a window. Karuna Jhamad split up in search. Jhamad was quite displeased with such menial work, grumbling non-stop. Only Karuna carried out orders in silence, as always. Kong Seal was curious. Have you always been this quiet? He replied flatly. As a ruined apostle, there was no one to talk to, so I didn't talk much. What about when you were a fairy? I don't remember anymore. No one besides Kong Seal had ever used him as a summon. Therefore, information about him was extremely scarce. The details of a summon are very important to a summoner. Kong Seal quietly decided to slowly learn everything about Karuna and Jhamad. In the end, They found a clue in one of the rooms. The walls were covered with documents, most of them unclear and seemingly unrelated, but Kong Seal still found the key point. A document read, "In the depths of the great forest, a secret laboratory of Grizz has been found." According to what Kong Seal knew, Grizz was a very famous maverick in Pandia. He was not only proficient in mechanical engineering, but also dabbled in various fields and created many groundbreaking inventions and works. Most of these had astonishing capabilities. For that reason, countless people coveted his talents. Thus, he set up secret laboratories across the continent and roamed from place to place. During the time he controlled 30 pieces, Kong Seal met Grizz only once. It was a chance encounter, yet they spent quite a long time together. The man spoke oddly and acted bizarrely, but was undoubtedly a genius. If he could obtain even a small portion of his inventions, equipment, or even just a blueprint from the lab, it would greatly help Kong Seal. At this point, he could only hope Char had gone to Grizz's lab as well. System prompt. The missing summoner has been updated to Grizz's secret laboratory. New quest objective. Search Grizz's secret laboratory. Time remaining 72 minutes. Shortly after, Kong Seal arrived before a heavy mechanical door. He summoned Jhamad. Try to open the door. Force is fine. Jhamad chuckled and pried the mechanical door open with his bare hands. This was one of the reasons Grizz was called a maverick. Back then, Kong Seal had asked him why he designed such doors so ridiculously. His answer was, "I painstakingly built it, yet it can't actually be used, then let it serve as a decoration." He tried to seize common sense in his own hands and crush it. Inside the laboratory were empty rooms and strange devices everywhere. Following the trail, Kong Seal finally found a note. "I'm very interested in this item, so I took it." System quest updated again. Objective: thoroughly search Grizzly's secret laboratory. But what Kong Seal cared more about now was what exactly did Qiao take? Karuna, standing beside him, handed him a few pages of documents. They were research notes on death. Does death hurt? If I die, will I truly turn into nothingness? If not, then does an afterlife exist as the believers say? I'm so curious to death. So, I have to find out. At a glance, Kong Seal could tell these were research records written by Grizz himself. Could this have to do with the item Qiao took? On this vast continent, no one has truly experienced death except for the undead. But they are beings that refuse death and fall outside the scope of this research. To peer at the true face of death, I made this device, the faint death induction device. From its literal meaning, it's a device that lets a person experience death. Both the concept and the effect are quite terrifying. Kongiel couldn't understand why Chawa would take this. During the exploration, because he forced doors open, he triggered the laboratory alarm. A large robot appeared before him. Karuna was about to swing his sword, but was stopped by Kong Seal. He noticed that the robot's movements did not match its massive size, far too stiff. He had Karuna first cut the vines wrapped around the robot. Once the vines were gone, the robot's demeanor immediately changed. "This is Mr. Grizz's relatively new laboratory number 81. I am the director here, Arda." Seeing it had no hostility, Kong Seal temporarily set aside the topic of illegal entry. "Thank you for visiting Mr. Grizz's laboratory. Do you have an appointment?" "No." "Then you won't be able to meet Mr. Grizz for now. However, you may tour the lab. If you don't mind, I can guide you. I'll trouble you then." The audience was already cracking up. He'd come to steal things and ended up being treated like an honored guest. Led by Arda, Kong Seal toured many research rooms.